Hello there and welcome. I'm Ole, and if you're new here, I really hope I'll earn your subscription today. I'm very excited about getting access to some of these miniatures because, as I said in a previous Heroes of Might and Magic 3 the board game video, I borrowed these miniatures from a friend and I couldn't paint all the factions that he bought because he wanted to paint them himself, which I think is totally awesome. I was just lucky to paint 4 of his factions. I ended up ordering the full game myself, but it hadn't arrived yet. So I reached out on Facebook in various groups and I got a hit within 1 hour. There was a local guy, he's not more than 6 kilometers away, that's about 3.5–4 miles, and I was allowed to paint his miniatures. So here they are, and his name is Danny. I really want to thank you for that, letting me painting your miniatures. It means a lot to me that I can start painting this dungeon faction, which we're going to paint today. So we better get started.
Let's start priming these. I got some new painting handles from Redgrass in Switzerland, and I think they're awesome. There's 2 different heads, a big and a small. Then you just add some putty and attach the miniature. The top rotates, and then you can just pop it off and attach a new top and mount another miniature. I'll do a centerful highlight. I'll start with this matte black from the Army Painter's Air series and blow it from below. This will give a very good shadow effect on the miniature. Next up, I will spray it with some matte gray, also from the Army Painter's Air series. And this time I will spray it from the top and down, so I can leave the shadow areas with the black I used before. To give it a final highlight, I will spray it gently from the top this white acrylic ink. This will give the edges a bright white highlight, and it's very useful if I'm going to use speed paints. I'm probably not going to use speed paints all over, but it will give me a good idea how the light works on this miniature. And finally, I'm actually going to use some speed paints, some purple swarm and grim black. I will mix them together to get a very dark purple color and spray it from below again, just so it won't be totally black, but it will have a purple shine. The dungeon capital town is a fortress of shadow and power, carved into the depths of earth upon jagged cliffs. And the cliffs is exactly where we're going to start, with some speed paint, ruddy fur. I think this color will be a good base coat for the cliffs. I also gave it some ruddy fur on the top, but I will darken it down later. I'll use this sunburst ochre to give the cliffs some highlights. I have this very tiny dry brush and it is perfect for this job. And to highlight it even further, I will use this urban buff and dry brush it the same way. I will also use the urban buff to paint the path that leads to the gate. On the city home screen, there is a portcullis, and I'll try to freehand it with this amber skin. It requires a very precise and very pointy brush. I just got some Artist Opus S. There was 5 brushes in a set. I just have to break them in on this. And this is the triple O brush, the tiniest one in the set. And it's still very difficult to paint this, but I think it starts to look okay. Strong tone wash. This is a brownish yellowish wash, and it will also run into the cavities and give a very good shadow effect. For the arches, I'll use this ironclad gray, just to darken them a bit down without making them totally black. And to give it a good transition on the edges, I'll use some dark tone wash. And the same thing goes for the top part of the castle. After all this washing, we need to do some highlights, and with this ash gray, I will paint each and every single stone on this build. And the crenellations also got a bit of this highlight. I watered down the same color and gave the towers and the surfaces a bit highlighted look, but I still wanted to see the dark colors behind it. I left the flames white from the primer, and then I'll start out with this moonbeam yellow as the first of the flaming colors. I will start with the white as the background, the yellow, and then I will use an orange. Burning ore. It is just working the opposite way. Usually you will start with the dark background and work you up with the highlights. Painting flames, it's the opposite way. Start with the light background, highlight with the mid-tone, and then the dark tone in the end. To give it a bit more lighting effect, I'll use the same orange and yellow and dry brush it on the pillars and various spots around the flames where they will illuminate pillars, tower, and walls. I rarely use the matte black in my paint jobs, but this time I will actually use it on the arches to make some more depths, like it's an arch you can look into. I know this is not all true to the game graphics, but I think it will work on this dungeon hometown. I went back to the ironclad grey and made some dirty paint on top of the tower just to darken it down. And now the town is ready to host some heroes and units for the dungeon faction. Troglodyte, the level 1 creature of dungeon. They can be upgraded to Infernal Troglodyte. I will follow the color scheme of the upgraded unit. I'll start out with the legs with some algae green speed paint from the army painter. Aged hide, another speed paint. I'll use that for the base coat on the rest of the body. The model is suited with the waistband. It is not in the computer game model, but I will take the liberty and paint it this murder scene, which is a dark purplish color, and I think since the dungeon color is purple, I will try on all the miniatures to add some kind of purple accent. Brownish decay, a yellowish brown, also speed paint for the staff. Death metal metallic paint is a very dark gold color, and I will use that for the tip of the spear. Pallid bone, also a speed paint, which is very good for bones. And this model actually has a couple of skulls hanging from his belt. Gravelord Grey will be the standard color for all the bases and all the miniatures of the dungeon faction. And some would say when using speed paints, you were almost done painting this miniature. But I'm not. I think speed paints are very good as a base coat, but now for some details. And with this vivid bolt, I'll start painting some more details freehand, like the stripes on the side of this Troglodyte. And the base coat for all the spikes will be this grotesque green. To bind everything together and enhance all the shadows, I will use this grim dark shadow wash. I'll just give the model a generous coat and it will give some more depth to the shadows. The electric lime is a bit darker color than the vivid bolt. And as you can see, I already used the vivid volt to paint the stripes after the wash. And I will use this electric lime to give it a more green tone. Some emerald forest to make some of the stripes a bit more green. I didn't think it was green enough, so I ended up using the green skin. For the legs, I'll use this barren dune. This is just to make some highlights, and I'll just dry brush the legs and call it done. The diabolic plum will be a perfect color to make some highlights on the waistband and the staff. I mixed some white into the diabolic plum to give it a brighter tone to make a final highlight on this Troglodyte. And I almost forgot, some worn stone, a very bright off-white color, just to make some highlight at the base. And now I think we can call it done. And let this Troglodyte to enter an army of a dungeon hero. Harpy, or the Harpy Hag, is the level 2 creature of dungeon. They have the special ability, if they are upgraded, to attack and return. amber skin will be the perfect color for this Harpy Hag. I'll try to make a transition with this wasteland clay into this harpy's chicken feet. I think this obsidian skin will be a very good, nice dark brown color for the base coat of the bottom of the wings. Jumping into the Gravelord Grey and give the base an overhaul. Gunmetal is a very dark silverish color and it will be a good base coat for all the metallics on this harpy. Diabolic Plum for the waistband, as this model also have. I thought the obsidian skin was dark enough for the bottom of the wings, so I mixed in some black to give it a darker tone. I went back to the amber skin and the wasteland clay to make a better transition between the chicken feet and the legs. I also used some of the amber skin on the top of the wings, and now I'll just dry brush the tips with this ash gray. This time I will use the strong tone wash. This is a bit brighter than the black wash and it has a more brownish yellowish tone to it. The wash is dry and I'll go back to the amber skin and start making some highlights. The hair will be highlighted with the ash stone, which I used before on the wingtips. Fairy Vermilion is one of the best red colors that Army Painter have ever made. It came out with the John Blanche paint sets. And this red color will be perfect for the eyes. I overdid it with the red eyes, so I have to fix it with this amber skin and make some touch-ups. Let's use this bright gold on the edges of the armor. And I will make some eyebrows with the obsidian skin. The plate mail metal is a bit brighter than the gunmetal, and it is perfect to make a highlight of the armor. This will give it a very shiny look. And this is done. Now this Harpy Hag is ready to enter the army of Dungeon. Beholders and Evil Eyes, the 3rd level creature of Dungeon. They are recruited in the Pillar of Eyes. Base coating it with some speed paint, Goddess Glow. And this Jelly Dew is a very bright green color, also a speed paint, and I will use it for the pores on the tentacle, or whatever it's called. And the mandatory Gravelord Grey for the base. Rainforest is a nice bright green color, and I will use that to make some highlights. Fairy Vermilion will still be my go-to red color when it comes to bright red colors, and I will use it on the tip of the rest of the tentacles. Brain Matter Beige. This will be the base color of the eyes. Moonstone Skin will be used to highlight the skin of this little eye. A strong tone skin shade is a bit brighter than the strong tone wash, and I will generously use it all over the body and tentacles. The wash is dry, and I will make some final highlight with this ruby skin. The Brain Matter Beige I will use for the eyes to make some highlights. And I almost forgot, the teeth need some paint too. The eyes need to be a bit more pinkish, and I'll just mix the Brain Matter Beige and the Fairy Vermilion to give it a nice pink color on the edge. I'm using the Fairy Vermilion to make some blood veins in the eyes. And this rainforest will be the dot in the center of the eye. And this evil eye is now ready to enter the army of Dungeon. Medusas, a Medusa Queen, the level 4 creature of the Dungeon faction. They are recruited from the Chapel of Stilled Voices. The Forest Fawn will be the base coat for the skin, but I will also make it a bit darker later. I think this might be too bright for starters. But this alpha blue will be perfect to make a transition into the front side of the snake part of the body. I think the Sunburst Ochre will be a good match for the rest of the snake body. Half of the snakes on the head was painted with the Sunburst Ochre, and the rest will be painted with this Evergreen Fog. I overpainted a bit with the evergreen fog, so I needed to do some touch-up with the sunburst ochre. The midnight olive here will be used for the clothing around her waist. Terrestrial Titan is a very dark purple, and I think for this cloak she wears will be perfect. I can do some minor highlights with a brighter purple later, but I think this dark purple is the one I will go with. Really gold metallic paint is a bit darker than the bright gold that I usually use. And I think for this Medusa, which is very dark, it will be perfect for her armor. The bow will have to be gold too. The snake part of the body will also need some pattern. I will use this matte black and freehand some of the circles that are on the snake body. I got a handful of washes here. I might not use all of them, but I will try to match the undercoat with the same color of wash. Purple tone on the dress, or is it a dress? No, I think it is a cape. Definitely not a cloak, as I said earlier. I'll use the grimdark shadow over the green areas. It is a very dark wash, but it has a green tint to it, and I think it will complement the green skin tone with some nice shadows. I used a strong skin tone over the golden parts. It removed a lot of the shiny metallic effect, so I have to reapply some gold paint to make it a bit more shiny. The alien purple is a more bright purple from the triad system. It is in the same triad as the terrestrial titan that I used for the cape, so it will be good to use it as an edge highlight. I used some grim black speed paint around and in the eyes to give her a very dark look. I kind of overdid it, so to fix the mistakes I used some of the same colors as I used for highlight on the skin. And for the eyes, I used the Moonbeam Yellow. This is one of the colors from the John Blanchy Masterclass sets. There was a bit too much of the yellow, so I had to go back to the Grim Black and just fix the edges around the eyes. I also used the Grim Black for the pupil in the snake eyes. The Medusa Queen is now ready to enter the armies of Dungeon. Minotaur and Minotaur King is the 5th level creature of Dungeon, and this creature is good for the morale of the army. For the fur, I will use this Fire Drake speed paint. For textured surfaces and especially fur is where speed paint are actually very good for base coating, because it will really give you the highlights and the shadows the right places. And this golden armor is one of the speed paint metallics. I rarely use these. It's an orange gold, and for base coating and a good foundation for the highlighted gold later, this will give the effect that I wish to achieve. And the Gravelord Grey is back, and this is, as you can see, for the base. Mithril metallic paint is for the axe and the small spikes on his braces. The horns will get this deep grey as a base coat. I'll use this strong tone because it really gives gold a very good effect. You can even use it over silver to make a golden-like effect. Highlighting metallics is always fun, and the true brass metallic paint here is very good at making golds shiny. I'll just dry brush it all over the golden surfaces. I use some leather brown to fix all the mistakes and just line up all the edges where I overpainted with the true brass. The base has many visible elements, and I will just dry brush it with this warm stone. Fairy Vermilion is back. This is for the eyes. One of the eyes were a bit difficult to access, but flipping the miniature upside down made it a lot easier. Buffed hide will be used to make some edge highlighting on the face of this Minotaur. I also used it on the hands and the braces. The edges have a darker gold tint. I'll use this greedy gold on the edges of the armor. There is a very nice pattern on the axe, and I painted gold, and to make some more shadows I filled it in with some strong tone wash. Now this Minotaur is ready for battle in the armies of Dungeon. The Manticore and Scorpicore are the 6th level creature of Dungeon. Manticore and their venomous cousins, the Scorpicores, have features combined of a bat, lion and scorpion. They have a venomous sting that will paralyze their enemy. I started laying out some black areas with the grim black speed paint, but I didn't think the effect was as good as I thought, so most of it will be painted over later. Blood Moon Red is one of the speed paints that came with the John Blanche Masterclass set from the Army Painter. It is an orange red, which is a very cool thing, but for this, I didn't think it worked on the model. On the other hand, this aged hide was perfect for the tail and the skin on the wings. I got a lot of the red speed paint on the base, so I started with the Gravelord Grey and just painted it over and blended it in, and it actually gave it a pretty cool effect. Blood red speed paint. Now I will try to save the body and the mane. I need it to be a deeper red, and maybe this blood red can solve the problem. I'll use the bony spikes for the eyes and teeth. And the fairy vermilion I'll use to make some highlights. The bony spike will be used for the claws and the bone structure on the wings. And I'll try to target only the bone structure with some dark wash and avoid getting it on the wings. Tomb King Tan is a very dark sand color, and I'll just give it a light dry brush all over the base. I actually wanted it to be a bit darker, so I used the Sunburst Ochre and dry brushed it again all over the base. And you can still see the red tint that came from the speed paint, and I think the effect is actually pretty nice. Sometimes when you think you're doing a mistake, you're actually doing something that could look cool. Well, it needs some yellow eyes. Why not a moonbeam yellow? The nose has to be a bit darker, and the Brigadine Brown is the darkest brown I have. I want to highlight the face a bit more, so this moonstone skin will be perfect for the job. And now this Scorpicore is ready to enter the armies of Dungeon. I just love dragons, and there is a lot of dragons in Heroes of Might and Magic, and Dungeon has 2 of them, the red dragon and the black dragon. If you want to defeat this black dragon, you really need something that can hit it hard. You can't use magic because it has 100% magic immunity. Purple Alchemy is one of my pink speed paints, and to make these wings pop and get a very good transition, I'll actually use my airbrush. And speed paints are almost like inks in an airbrush. It looks so cool if you have primed your minis with a centerful highlight. With the pink on the edges, I will work my way down to the middle with this Periwinkle Purple. Broodmother Purple is one of the paints from the Air series of the Army Painter. The Air series are ready to go directly into the airbrush, but I will thin it down a bit more because I really only need a very thin coat on the dark edges of the wings. On the rest of the body, I will use the Grim Black Speed Paint, just to give it the dark shade. And finally, some Ancient Honey Speed Paint on the chest. When using an airbrush, the risk for overspray is high. You can use different kinds of masking tools to avoid some of this, but you can also just paint it over again and fix all the overspray. I'll use the Grim Black to fix this arm. Base coating the base, Gravelord Grey. Trying to make something black and you don't want it to be black, I will use this Terrestrial Titan to give the black look a purple shine. I'll just dry brush it all over the scales. Gothic Blue is a purplish blue, and I'll use this to dry brush the wings to give all the edges some highlights. Company Grey is the closest thing I have to being a white without being a white. I'll dry brush the horns, the tail, and even some parts of the wings. NMM is non-metallic metal. This is a technique I have watched many painters do during the last couple of years. I have never practiced it myself. I have not even tried it, and this will be the first time that I will do non-metallic metal. I will start with a dark moonbeam yellow, and then I will work my way up. But the yellow is too bright, so I'll try to give it this orange tone wash and see if I can make the yellow tone more orange and dark. I need it to go all the way to the brown tones. And while I wait for the wash to dry, I will use the fairy vermilion for the eyes, nose and tongue of the dragon. I also made some tiny highlights in the horns and the face of the dragon. I still use the company gray for this. Glowing Inferno is one of the darker oranges in the triads. Now it's getting serious. This is the first time I'm actually trying to make some non-metallic metal. Let's give it a shot. I have seen so many people doing this a lot of times, and I know all the theory about how to do this, but practical, this is truly the first time I have to do this. I'll just work my way up into the yellows and find out where to put the shiny elements. I will always have to think about how light will affect the metal and where will it be shiny. And the final brightest color I was using was the ivory white, which is not even in the triad system. I have the ivory white from the John Blanchy set. And I think we are almost done making this non-metallic metal. And then to the base and finalize that. I will start giving it a light dry brush with a mid-tone purple and then finishing it up with some highlights with the company gray. I spent 4.5 hours painting this, and now this black dragon is ready to enter the armies of the dungeon faction. There's 4 heroes in the dungeon faction. 3 of the heroes are warlocks. They are magic heroes. Olimar, Jedites, and Deemer. And then we have 1 might hero, Minotaurs. There's 2 miniatures representing might and magic. I'll use the same color scheme for both heroes. I'll just switch back and forth between the different colors. I will start out with the grim black for the horse. The horse will eventually end up being gray, but for now, the grim black is only the base coat. I will use the blood red speed paint on the magic hero. The flag on both heroes will be painted with the terrestrial titan, the darkest purple, and fire drake for the lance. I'll also use the fire drake on the saddle on the might hero. I'm using a plate mail metallic paint on all the armor on the might hero. On both heroes, I chose the barbarian flesh as the base skin color. I really didn't like the blood red speed paint on the magic hero. So here on the might hero, I will use the fiery vermilion. The fiery vermilion is also perfect using on the horse's eyes. Leather brown will be used all the places on both heroes where there is leather. Brigandine brown, one of the darkest browns that I own. I'll use it for the boots. Back on the might hero, I'm ready to use the company gray to highlight the mane and tail for the horse. The Gravelord Grey, yeah, I've used that on all my bases, but I think it's a fantastic base coat for rocks. And then it's very easy to highlight it in different colors later. I'll also need some bright gold to make some tiny buttons on, I don't know what it's called, the thing on the horse. I'll use this dark tone wash on most parts of both heroes. I was a bit too generous with the wash on the magic hero, so I was a bit more careful doing the might hero. With this deep gray, I will start doing some layers because both horses need to be gray and not black. The darkest tone on the flag was the terrestrial titan. And the next one is actually from another triad set. This is the blanched berry. The darkest tone of the desaturated violets from the John Blanchy set. Blanched berry. The next layer on the horse will be this ash gray. The next purple tone on the flag will be this mage cast magenta. And for the highlights, I will use this warlock magenta. For the final highlights and making some texture on the horse, I will use one of the brighter grays, the company gray. And the mane will be dry brushed with the regiment gray, which is the brightest gray just before white. And the same thing goes for the base. You haven't seen much of the Might Hero, and unfortunately I lost a lot of footage painting it. The same goes for the Magic Hero. There's a lot more details here, because I unfortunately also lost some video footage painting all the details on this Magic Hero. But here they are, both heroes, the Might and the Magic. And now they're ready to lead their armies against the enemy for the dungeon faction. And what is that? The rim is already painted purple. For the rims on the dungeon faction, I will use this warlock magenta. It is almost the exact color as the plastic on this dungeon faction was before I painted these miniatures. You can actually see it in the bottom of the bases while I'm doing the rims. I have this ritual, and painting the rims is the final touch when a miniature is done. It's like I'm locking down the miniature for more paint when the rim is painted. A lot of the rims was hit by darker colors and I had to paint it over twice, and this is the final coat I put on the dragon.
And the dungeon faction is done. It's been a rough last 24 hours. Yesterday I put the last drop of paint on these miniatures, and after that I had a lot of editing to do. I just finished almost editing these. I just need to put this outro, and there's 3 hours to release of this video, so I've been very busy. But I really love the results, especially my first attempt painting this non-metallic metal. I'm actually amazed how easy it was. No, it's not easy. I used a lot of time doing this. But enough talking, let's see how these miniatures turned out. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. I really appreciate you being here, and a huge thank you to Danny for letting me painting his dungeon faction. I also got 2 more factions from Danny that I will paint, and they will be a bit further in the future, but it will be soon. If you already haven't done it, please hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below what you think about me painting these miniatures and how your miniatures turned out if you are painting them yourself. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye for now.